Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. Merry Christmas to everyone. Deputy Clerk, may we start off with a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon?
Here.
Councilman Morado?
Yeah.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Here.
Councilwoman Souza? Here. Council President Brito?
Yeah, thank you. Chair will recognize a motion for the City Council to meet an close executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A2 for new claims and litigation as listed on tonight's agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion at this point in time to proceed into executive session?
So moved, Mr. President.
Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
With that being said, Deputy Clerk, may we have a vote?
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morado?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Council President Brito?
Aye, a motion to go in executive session was passed by a vote of 5-0. We will now proceed in executive session and reconvene immediately following. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the City of East Providence City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. May we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I just ask for those of you who have hats, can you kindly remove them? Thank you. Deputy Clerk, may we start off with a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Here.
Councilman Morado.
Here.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Here.
Councilwoman Souza. Here. Council President Brito.
Yeah. Next item, please.
Council President, if I could make a motion to, just gonna change this on mine. First of all, to seal the minutes of the executive session.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morado.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
And Council President, when I started to say, before I jumped the gun, I'd like to move up an item because we have some staff here and no sense in having them stay all night, and another presenter. So if there isn't an objection on page 6, I'd like to move up under C, resolutions number 1 and 2, authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Bristol Water Authority for the transfer of the Pawtucket Avenue pump station, and then followed by number 2. I'd like to move that up.
Any objections to moving up the resolution? With no objections?
Make that a motion if we need. Okay.
No objections, you may proceed, Councilman.
So there, something that we've been talking about since, pretty much since we were all elected, the situation with water services in the city. And this first resolution does authorize the mayor into an agreement with the Bristol Water Authority for the transfer of the Pawtucket Avenue pump station. Councilman Cahoon and I asking this to be heard. And we have copies of the resolutions. And at this point, I think there'll be a presentation from, we have our water superintendent, and Dan.
Mr. Borges?
Borges from DPW.
Good evening, Council. So we have two resolutions before you tonight. As Council Vice President Rodrick mentioned, both between the city and Bristol County Water, one for the transfer of the pump station on Pawtucket Avenue, and another for the Phase 2 interconnection between Kent Heights and Pawtucket city limits, which is currently under design. So I'll give the floor to Jim. I'll let him give you a little bit of background on the two agreements before you, so you can have that information.
Good evening. This is pretty straightforward stuff. First resolution deals with the transfer of the pump station. As it exists today, that is our only alternative source of water into the city. We've been working on this for most of the 11 years that I've been here. It's in the ownership of Bristol County. It's a pretty good deal for a buck. We've put a great deal of money into some repairs to make it functional. And we're certainly, it's one of 3 pieces that we're going to be talking to you about over the next month to put into place an agreement to go forward for an alternate supply to Pawtucket. The second resolution deals with engineering services and a joint venture for the design of a Pawtucket pipeline. That will give the city a true second source of water. As it stands today, with the pump station and so forth, we're still tied to the Providence supply. If we go to an alternate source such as Pawtucket, there's no chance that the city will be out of water. That's been our biggest weakness over the last several years, is what happens if we lose a Providence supply? And the answer is you're out of water. So the Pawtucket pipeline concept, we did a presentation back in February, and it's finally, after 10 years, it's come to the point now where we have an agreement in place, pending your approval, that decides the business relationship between the City of East Providence and the Bristol County Water Authority to engage in a joint venture for the design of that pipeline. Built into that agreement are several, I call them out clauses, but there are some stepping stones that we can take a look at whether it's feasible, whether it's cost effective, and whether we still want to do it. So we're not committed to a blank check, so to speak. Our exposure on that, as the documents stand today, the exposure to the city is about, in round numbers, $800,000. That consists of our portion of about 1.2 million from Pawtucket, not Pawtucket, rather Bristol County, in fees to Beta Engineering, their design engineer, and another 100 and change for what we call peer review services. So we hire our own engineer to review the design and ensure the efficiency of the design, and that it fits our utility.
Superintendent Marvel, thank you. Recently in the news, there was talk about federal monies made available for water improvements and water usage. Would this apply here?
It could. That's, certainly, up to the administration to decide, and you folks.
I apologize, I didn't bring that article I had. I forget the source, but it's federal
There are federal
infrastructure. Yes.
We've also, in our last rate filing, we also approved, we can pay cash for this. We have the cash in the rates and currently in the water fund to pay for what we're talking about tonight.
But if the infrastructure fund covers it, then we could leave that cash in the water fund.
You could. This is for engineering services. I'm not sure what the restrictions are on the other. It might be for hard infrastructure improvements. These are what we call soft improvements for their design services and water quality studies.
I'll let other members discuss this with my co-sponsor. I just would end my comments with this. Nothing affects people other than turning on your water faucet and there is no water. We've seen this coast to coast when there have been problems in other communities. Bristol County came close to that. Providence came close to that. This pumping station was built, I believe, in '97. We have 100-year-old pipes in other spots. We have a pipeline coming under the Providence River. This, in my opinion, is a no-brainer.
Flint, Michigan is another.
Flint, Michigan, yeah. Councilman?
Mr. President, if I may, and just to kind of put some context around this for folks who are maybe new to this discussion, when we began having this discussion, we learned that there are two water pipelines that traverse the Providence River, one which provides water service to the city of East Providence, and one which is a little bit further south, connects to Riverside, and then goes out to Bristol County, Barrington, Warren, et cetera, correct?
Correct.
And phase one of this project was to allow Bristol County Water Authority, at their expense, to connect their further down access point, if you will, up to our water tower in Kent Heights, coming up Dover Avenue, right?
That's correct.
So Dover Avenue, that project phase one is now complete.
Almost.
Ish.
It's probably maybe 80%.
I haven't seen any trucks outside of my window lately, so I'm...
No, it's about 80%. They still have a little bit to go.
Okay, so now that covers Bristol County Water Authority, or the whole Bristol County region, in terms of water security, so long as they have access to our water if they lose their primary point of access, correct?
Correct. That's what we did when their pipeline broke a couple of years ago.
But the plan always was, as far as I know, they provide phase one at their expense. We share phase two with them, because then that gives us both an alternative, you know, backfill, if you will, all the way back to Pawtucket.
It does, and it also gives us the opportunity to cost share and minimize the impact to residents in East Providence as well.
And there's one more thing I recall from the discussion when we talked about the various robots that go through the pipe to check it out, the various, you know, sonic tests that they can do to make sure that the pipe has integrity. We're kind of limited with what we can do in terms of maintenance and investigations on that pipe, because we're concerned about damaging it and thereby losing our water supply while we don't have another alternative, correct?
That is correct. And kind of what these things do for us is, the first one gives us ownership of the pump station. We're also timing the inspection of the pipe that you're talking about with all those devices from Cranston all the way down into East Providence. We're timing that inspection with taking over that pump station, that 24-inch line coming online from Bristol County to Kent Heights. That all plays in together, and that's part of our end game to be able to do that.
And our primary point of access, the larger pipe, one that's further north up the river, was, if I recall correctly, installed sometime around the Kennedy administration and has had little to no maintenance on it since, right?
Right, 1967.
All right, a little later.
Okay.
Johnson administration.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there's the context.
That puts us in place, and you know, these soft costs that we're talking about sharing, you know, in round numbers, it's about, our cost is about $800,000. It's money well spent.
Any further questions from the council? I know I think we had a couple of workshops
I've
on
been
this early
following
on
this
as
for a
well.
while.
We do.
Is it possible to amend this resolution to read that it will be paid for either out of the opera or the infrastructure fund versus paying it out of the, you know, money that Mr. Marvel just mentioned?
Well, I think one of the reasons we had that presentation back in whatever it was, March or May, when we voted to increase the rates, had to do with being able to fund projects very much like this through the capital fund. And in fact, I think this is one of the one that was referenced.
It was.
Now, I personally have almost no appetite for funding infrastructure project from the ARPA money, because I think that the purpose for that is something different. The infrastructure money, however, I think that's a different question. I think that this sounds, having read through the initial details of that infrastructure bill, something less like this sounds very much like what would be in the wheelhouse for that money.
It would be, and you certainly need to take a look at that, because you know, we don't have enough information today to know what the hard costs are going to be.
So when we did the vote to raise the water rates, infrastructure funds and opera money, that wasn't even on our radar as a discussion. No one saw that coming.
True.
So in fairness, we did raise water rates, and we do have, you know, some money saved, what appears to be some money saved based on that. Why are we going to utilize that money now on this when we clearly have free money from the federal government in opera and infrastructure fund?
Yes.
Why can't we use that? And that's, and from my understanding, the opera, it can't be any more clearer as far as sewer and water infrastructure that it should go towards.
So, Council Morado, just to add, there are still some limitations to the way that that money can be spent with regards to engineering versus construction. And we would really have to look at how when that money starts coming in, those bills coming in, if that can actually be eligible for those funds. I can't give you all the information on that at this time. I'd have to look into it a little further, but as we mentioned, I mean, it was intended to, we had built this into the rates.
So is there any way we can get that information before we take a vote on this?
Well, why wouldn't we, so let's say that this was an expenditure that was covered under the infrastructure bill, which I presume we would investigate to the fullest, because we'd want to know if we could get the quote-unquote free money from the federal government, the idea kind of makes me quail. But the, if we could pursue that funding, and this is in our budget now, why wouldn't this be something that we could pursue retroactively for reimbursement through that same source?
I'm going to defer that to Mayor Fung. He's been helping in negotiating with Bristol County, and he has a lot of experience with the ARPA funds, so I think he'd be a better suited to answer that question.
Thank you, members of the council. Just by way of background, I have been engaged by the city of East Providence with respect to negotiations with Bristol County on all of these agreements. But one of the outside engagements that I also have, and this is what Dan was referring to, is ARPA has been one of the expertise. As some of you may know, I have been engaged by the state on a lot of local and school issues to provide advice. And what Dan indicated is correct as far as ARPA. Absolutely, a lot of these categories fall within the ARPA eligible uses. However, it's not just within ARPA. ARPA's context, you have to take a look at also the Code of Federal Regulations, because there are a host of other laws with respect to how you can spend it, eligible expenses, some of the distinctions that Dan mentioned, whether it's a soft cost or a hard cost, strictly for construction. So a lot's going to depend on those bills. I could, as we're proceeding along, probably provide an opinion, depending on some of those costs, of what may or may not be eligible within the ARPA confines, because it's not just confined to the context of that ARPA federal law.
So let me ask you this, so isn't it true that, or is it true that some of these funds, there's guidelines in it, such as if you don't use it, you have to give it back at some point? Isn't there some type of restriction?
Under ARPA, what happens is you have until 2024 to obligate the funds within any of those eligible use categories. Sewer, water are definitely within those eligible categories. You have until 2026, once the funds have been obligated, to expend those funds. So, but here's the caveat that you got to be careful with the obligation and expenditure of those funds, because you're right, you have that time period to use it. But if it's an ineligible use, and what's different from ARPA from most federal funds, because many of you know with federal funds, there's usually like a 75-25 match that comes from a city town. This one is all on the city of East Providence or the state of Rhode Island, whoever has those funds. If you don't use it correctly, the federal government, Treasury in particular, which is monitoring and providing the final rules on this, can recapture those funds. And it's a quick time period. So what I've been advising a lot of my clients, a lot of municipal clients as well as state, be cautious about use of these funds. In fact, right now we're only operating on the interim rules from Treasury. The final rules are supposed to be coming out sometime in January from what we're hearing. Many cities and towns are waiting for the specifics to make sure that all their projects now and into the future fall within all the guidelines. So I just urge a little bit of caution, because as of right now, Dan's right, it falls into the broad categories, but we just need to make sure that all the expenses are eligible and consistent with all the other laws, like the uniform guidance as well.
How long would it take to give us a guidance on everything you just mentioned as far as those guidelines? And
I would say the best, I've been advising a lot of my clients to wait until the Treasury issues their final rule, which is anticipated right now sometime in January. They've had these interim rules issued since, I think it was around April or May of this year, but they've been getting a lot of questions from across the country. That's probably the best way, just to, you know, solidify that everything that you're looking to use it for can fit.
Councilman Cahoon or Rodrick, what's the timeline with this resolution? Everything we do is like, you know, rush and has to be done yesterday, but.
Well, I'm not so sure this has been rushed. Superintendent Marvel has been working on this for 11 years. A lot of us have been talking about the water needs of the city since the 60s. So why can't we move ahead with the logistics of this resolution? Let's get this thing going. And we have the fiduciary budgetary responsibilities. Beyond that, we can then direct administration to try to use the opera funds if and when we can totally use them. But I don't want to hold up on this.
Yeah, from my sense, I mean, looking at everything we've seen about that pipe, I mean, who knows when that thing's gonna stop working or blow? I think nobody. Is it reasonable to assume that it could leak at any time? I think Bristol County experienced a leak in a brand-new pipe. Do I necessarily want to be sitting here waiting to find out if we can use another set of federal funds for a potential $800,000 exposure and having no water in the city? No, I don't think I do. So, I mean, I would be inclined to put this through now, and if we can talk about a reimbursement later, great.
So why
Win-win.
don't we add some of that language now, pass it now, add some of that language, that'll be the caveat, right? That the city will look into, you know,
Pursuing reimbursement by,
correct, something. I need something in this because I'm not gonna sign off on this and it's not gonna make it back to the council. So why can't we do it now? Add that in there and then we can pass it.
I mean, it does make sense to, if there are funds out there, potential for municipalities to utilize, that we would try to utilize that to capture back any monies that we put out for any of our infrastructure
Well,
improvements.
that's why I brought it up tonight. I'm the one who just brought this up, our opera funds available.
Well,
If we can somehow.
I'm not saying the opera funds, because obviously there are severe restrictions and you have to be really careful with that, but
Yeah, well,
the federal, like you mentioned, the article that you had read.
infrastructure, wherever they come from, but I'm not ready to withhold all the work
I'm not
that has been
suggesting
done.
that, Councilman, I'm just, I'm agreeing that we should try to recuperate and make sure that the administration is also in agreement that they would try to apply and recuperate some of that funds, even though we have them in the budget, because we've raised the rates. But again, like I've mentioned before, I'm not interested in continuously raising rates and hurting our citizens who might not be able to otherwise afford them with increases that come year on, year in. So if we can get other funds to supplement or to pay us back, then I would also, you know, vote to move in that direction. in
Sure.
addition to-
Who's against that? And administration is here. Can I ask them, the various administrators, can you pursue other funding while we still go ahead tonight? And
So I might have a solution. If I
Go
may.
ahead, yeah. go
So,
ahead.
if I understand the council's request is, you want the administration to explore and use other available federal funds if and when they become available for the recoup of this cost. So we just add to the resolution, the administration is urged to use all available federal funds to pay for this project if and when available, period.
I'm fine with that.
So for both resolutions.
Well, we're only using $1 for the first one, so I don't think we have to use
Yeah,
federal
yeah,
funds
no,
for
for the
$1. Yeah,
second
this is for
one.
the second one.
Mayor?
I'm sorry. The other interesting, if you remember, I believe that when you approve the water rates so many months ago, we also have a pause in that they're not automatically going to be raised. We're going to be able to reevaluate where we are with the cost and expenditures. So to the extent that we are able to recoup some of these funds and not use it, it's not going to be automatic. The council's going to be asked to come back, and we might actually be able to lower the rates or not go forward with the increases because of other available funds or whatnot. So there's a built-in pause in the water rate increases that you guys approved many months ago. Am I right, Mr. Marvel?
You got it.
All right. Good memory. I thought, yeah.
Mhm. Mayor?
One quick thing, for my brother, if you would mind adding if eligible after the federal funds.
When available and if eligible.
Right, because I just need to make sure that everything falls within the parameters of both those laws, so that, just to protect your interests.
I'm comfortable with that.
Want to read that again? So the administration is urged to use all available federal funds to pay for this project, if and when available, and if,
Eligible.
and, I'm sorry, and, excuse me, if and when available and if eligible, sorry.
so
Yeah.
can I move to amend the resolution as
Yes.
read?
Yes.
Okay, motion
Second.
made.
This is where, by the way, we're voting on 2, not 1 now.
Sorry, we're out of order.
Yeah.
I'm out of order. All right, jump the gun. So let's vote on 1 first. So let me retract my motion, Councilwoman Souza, if that's all right with you.
Yep.
And as far as the first one goes, move to approve, what do we call this, the transfer of the pump station?
transfer of the pump station.
Okay.
Second.
Resolution authorizing the transfer of the pump station.
Second.
Okay. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Cahoon,
Aye.
Councilman Morato,
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next resolution.
So then I move to amend the resolution for the cost-sharing agreement as read by Solicitor Marcello.
Second.
Councilman Cahoon.
Roll call.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye.
And now I move to approve the resolution as amended.
Correct. Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, we'll proceed back on course here.
Consent calendar.
Make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the consent calendar.
second.
We have a second. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on
Yes, sir.
approving the consent calendar?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next one brings us to what, licenses?
Yep.
Okay, they're non-public hearing. Do they all have everything in place?
They do.
Any discrepancies? Anything you're looking for, waiting
Not
on
that
from anyone?
I have been told.
If the council doesn't have any
She
questions
didn't tell
regarding,
me about it.
we all set?
Yeah.
Okay.
May I have 1 second, Mr. President? I just wanna make sure.
Can we lump these?
Do you want to?
No, he may be here.
Okay.
if you want to ask him.
I'm clear.
We'll do one? Okay.
But none of these are public hearings.
These are non-public hearings. We'll go one by one. We'll start off with the first one, please. The road race.
Licenses for non-public hearing. The road race is the applicant Karen Zions, Friends of Palm Rocks Lighthouse. The location, the start and finish is going to be at Rose Larissa Park. The date is going to be April 23rd, 2022. It's going to start at 8 a.m. and it will conclude at 10 a.m.
At the pleasure of the council.
Motion approved.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next application, please.
Next application is for Auto Body Repair Shop. It's a new application. Freddie L. Corey is the applicant. The business is L. Corey Brothers Invest One Inc. The DBA is Showcase Auto and Truck Collision. The business address is 2258 Pawtucket Avenue.
They have all the paperwork into the office.
They
At
do.
the pleasure of council, anyone have any questions, concerns?
No,
No.
move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on it?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next application, please.
Application for holiday sales. It's a new application. Hamden Ahmed is the applicant. The business name is Grab and Go Mini Mart, and the DBA is Grab and Go. The business address is 350 North Broadway.
Is the applicant present? Yes, he is.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Joe, just so you know, through the clerk's office, we found out that this business had been actually bought and sold, but the licenses actually were not transferred. The applicant believed that he had bought the licenses, which I guess he did, but they'd actually, as you know, before you buy a license, they have to be transferred with the approval of the city council. So he came in and did fill out the applications. And so I think we're all set with that. The only thing that were outstanding was a police, fire, and health department
The health
certificate.
department was outstanding.
Outstanding.
I applied for all of them. The fire department, the health department is in process, and I already called for fire department. They were there a couple of days ago, and I ordered the service they requested. They needed some tags for fire extinguishers, which has been done. And Thursday, the 23rd, the building inspection is coming to inspect the building.
Okay, so I just want to put that on the record, so I would just ask that this be granted subject to meeting all the other legal requirements. And I don't think it was a fault of your own, it was just a miscommunication,
Thank you, sir.
misunderstanding, so thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
So in the event that this gentleman won't have to come back, if we want to make a
Aye.
motion.
I would make a
based
motion,
on,
I'm sorry,
Changes based on the changes.
sure. I would make that motion subject to all of the legal permitting requirements and inspections being concluded successfully.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Council President Brito?
Aye, thank you, sir. Okay. All that information, all you have to do is bring it into the clerk's office. Okay. All right, you have one more too. Last one.
Application for victualling license, Class 3, new. The applicant is Hamden Ahmed. It's Grab and Go Mini Mart LLC. The DBA is Grab and Go. The business address is 350 North Broadway.
Will we still need all the
The
information?
same.
That was the same
Yep.
request? Okay. Anyone?
So move to approve, contingent upon approval of the other legal requirements and inspections.
Second.
Okay. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Council President Brito?
Aye, thank you.
Thank
When
you,
get
sir.
that, you could just see the clerk and you'll be all set.
Yeah, the clerk.
Deputy Clerk.
Okay, all right, I will. Thank
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Good luck.
Holiday.
Next one, please.
Next is proclamations and presentations. We have a presentation on the City of East Providence's plan to update the hazard mitigation plan in 2022. The City of East Providence Planning Department will present.
Mr. Fazioli?
Good evening. Thank
Evening,
you.
sir.
I'm joined here also by other presenters who include Dominic Leonardo, a senior planner with the city's planning department, and Wayne Barnes, who's the EMA project manager with the city. So just want to provide some background, and we'll let Dominic and Wayne get into the details. But this plan that the city has in its present fashion, the hazard mitigation plan, was first completed in 2004, with updates occurring in 2011 and 2017. The process is now underway for 2022, and it coincides with other planning department activities regarding this topic. It's especially important with the comprehensive plan, which will probably be complete by the first quarter of 2022. So it's very good timing that this process is underway while the comprehensive plan will be addressing these issues as well. The hazard mitigation plan that the city has, which is available on our website, is not a static document that sits on a shelf. It's part of our everyday planning efforts in the planning department that we rely on heavily to mitigate the risk of natural hazards and disasters. Having a hazard mitigation plan enables the city to receive federal funding, FEMA assistance, and makes us eligible for homeowners to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. So with that said, I'm going to have Dominic talk about some of the specific elements of the plan that we've incorporated over the years, as well as Wayne will get into the details of the plan process itself.
Thank you, Bill. Good evening, members of the council. So in the spring of 2020, the city partnered with the Nature Conservancy as well as CRMC to work on a pilot living shoreline project at the Rose Larissa Park in Riverside. Then in June 2021, the city staff, as well as the planning department, worked with the Nature Conservancy. We participated in a municipal resiliency workshop where we looked at the strengths and vulnerabilities of the city. The city just applied for a grant to the Narragansett Bay Estuary Program. This grant is for $45,000 to address the impacts of stormwater runoff, particularly in the Amaral Street and Catamore Boulevard neighborhoods. Also, the mixed-use overlay districts that the council adopted, particularly on Waterman Ave, Taunton Avenue, Riverside Square, that reduces the minimum parking requirements, actually goes a long way to reduce the stormwater impacts. The tree inventory program, the city, and as well as the urban forestry program completed this summer, identified all the street trees in the city. So now the city has an inventory of the species, the size, and the condition of the tree. This will help when it comes to mitigating hazards to trees, such as any different type of species that might impact a specific species of trees. Now the city can perform some preventative maintenance, and this can guide future decision-making for future tree plantings. The city's also, as Bill mentioned, updating the comprehensive plan. Within the comp plan, there is an element that focuses on natural resource protection and identification. Any project that comes through the planning department for a development plan review, planning and engineering review each plan with respect to stormwater management, require all stormwater to be managed on site. We look at the drainage, we look at the site's location within floodplains, and the availability of city services to be able to access the site during an emergency. Certain infill development projects that have occurred during the city have improved the risk the city faces to hazard mitigation or mitigating hazards. Any development kind of pre-1960 that was done before the city zoning ordinance in 1960 might have the entire parcel as all impervious property. So now anytime those particular parcels have been redeveloped, such as the Circle Street project up in Rumford, the parcel is improved in its stormwater management capacity and its landscaping when it's brought up to the current city standards, zoning standards. So those are some of the projects that the city and planning have been working on. And then I'm going to pass it over to Wayne, who's going to talk about the hazard update.
Good evening. I'm Wayne Barnes. I work for the fire department technically as an emergency manager, and I'm working with the planning department on the hazard mitigation plan. Hazard mitigation isn't really like very intuitive to a lot of people, so I'm just going to quickly sort of describe what hazard mitigation planning is. The definition is a sustained action to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to life and property from a hazard event, taking action before disaster strikes. And this is, by and large, a natural hazard mitigation plan. We're not necessarily dealing with terrorism and other like man-made hazards at this point, although at some point this plan may start incorporating some of that, but as of now, it is a natural hazard mitigation plan. An example of hazard mitigation in your own house is if your roof is starting to leak, you have a seam where water is coming in, you're going to fix that, or you're going to perhaps replace your whole roof. That's an example of something to mitigate something much bigger happening. And what we're looking at here is to identify hazards on a neighborhood and city scale that will help us to mitigate hazards that we get mostly from weather and also from other natural sources. Some of these mitigation events can include local flood reduction, stormwater management projects, protective measures for utilities, water and sewer systems, building retrofits and buyouts, etc. Among the accomplishments in recent years that were identified in the current 2017 Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is still currently valid, are the upgraded Warren Avenue culvert along the Seekonk line and channel improvements along the Runnins River and in some of those tributaries to the Runnins. Upgrading the water lines across the city that we've been doing, probably starting with the original stimulus funding back around 2010, 2011. Financing and installing generators in city facilities like City Hall, the Senior Center, and the Public Works complex that we did through a lot of grant money and also some capital budget funding. The coastal erosion project that was underway down at Rose Larissa Park, and now the reconstruction of the seawall, all part of hazard mitigation. Benefits of the plan, including what Dominic pointed out, we're able to purchase purchasing federal flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. It makes our residents eligible for that. It enables our participation in the optional community rating system program, which we are part of, along with about 11 or 12 other communities in Rhode Island. And that gets our residents in the floodplain with flood insurance a 10% discount on their policies. And that's becoming pretty significant as flood insurance rates increase quite a lot toward market rates. And it also opens up the opportunity to apply for various FEMA grants for hazard mitigation projects. Long-term sea level rise is a big issue that FEMA expects us to address as part of this plan, and we will be doing that, along with the usual hazards, including hurricanes, major winter storms, severe thunderstorms, etc. And we're looking for input from residents in the business community regarding hazards that they are most concerned with and ideas for pre-disaster actions to help mitigate those hazards. And as Bill mentioned, the current 2017 Hazard Mitigation Plan is online. It's on the Emergency Management webpage of the city's website. Scroll down and you'll eventually find it. It's a very long document. It's got a lot of good weather information because I wrote it and I can't help it. It's just what I do. But it also has sort of the meat of the plan, which is action items and stuff like the risk assessment matrix and all of that stuff. So there's lots of reading in there, some light reading for a quiet winter evening. And if anybody has any any input on this plan is much appreciated because we need the public input as part of our planning process. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I ask Wayne, where should the public input be placed at that website that you mentioned, the cities? Where would people make their comments?
It's probably best for now to actually email me, wbarnes, B-A-R-N-E-S, at eastprovidenceri.gov, because that'll get directly to me, and I'm working with the planning department, and actually in the planning.
Can you repeat that again slowly for the recording?
Okay, wbarnes, W-B-A-R-N-E-S, at eastprovidenceri.gov.
Knowing your proficiency with weather predicting white Christmas this weekend?
Not likely.
Not likely,
No.
okay. You're on camera.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately not. Maybe a little bit of rain, a light mix, but mostly not a white Christmas, unfortunately.
So you don't need the hazard mitigate by a shovel?
Yeah.
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
So at this point, part of the process is to invite the public to provide input and feedback about their issues that they would like us to focus on at this session, if the council would like to see if there's any members of the public to address and express their concerns about public feedback on areas of vulnerability. So, and that's something that all of us are here. We'll take note of that in addition to the emails and other feedback that people will provide.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions from the council?
Nothing? Does the public have any questions? Please approach the podium. Now, if you signed up for public comment as well, you can utilize this time to speak on behalf of this topic.
Thank you, Council President. My name is Candy Seal, 1340 South Broadway, East Providence. I'm here this evening to comment on Mayor De Silva's public informational hearing on its hazard mitigation plan. It's not directly directed toward the plan itself, but just some comments. This is part one of a two-part statement. The announcement on the mayor's Facebook page encouraged residents to attend and to assist him and his staff in moving the process forward, and I'm more than happy to assist. The mayor notes his desire to reduce the city's vulnerability to natural hazards and expresses his concern over excessive heat, coastal erosion, and sea level rise, among other natural calamities. To me, this is the definition of irony. Keep Metacomet Green has been talking for a year and a half about the dangers of climate change, specifically these issues. Unfortunately, the mayor has paid us no heed. In fact, the majority of this council chose not to listen either. The highly respected Kurt Spaulding, currently professor at the Institute at Brown for Environment and Society, and formerly executive director of Save the Bay for 18 years, addressed this body in July. He spoke at length about resilience studies and hazard mitigation, the subject of this evening's hearing. The majority of this council paid him as much respect as they have shown us these past 18 months, and chose for the most part to disregard his input. This past spring, as part of Keep Metacomet Green's Just the Facts video interview series, Professor Spaulding sat for an informative Zoom interview with our Heather Andrade. Here are a few of his comments from that interview, and I quote, "Everything we know about the well-being of urban communities is that connection to nature helps people in so many ways, in terms of their health, their mental well-being, and just the well-being of the community," end quote. Professor Spaulding on floodwaters, quote, "I have a pretty good handle on how land and water connect. One thing that is very interesting to me is the hydrological connection of the golf course to the bay," referring, of course, to Metacomet. "Watching that connection, how the marsh grasses are migrating inland because of sea level rise, it became clear to me that the property itself is a natural buffer for what's going to happen on the bay. The bay itself is going to rise significantly in terms of seawater, essentially rising perhaps as much as 1.5 to 2 feet or 3 feet by 2050. And we're right at the inflection point right now, this decade, when sea level rise will increase very quickly. So what is important about Metacomet? It's a place where water can go. A lot of the upper bay is all walled off, and the ability to migrate marsh inland will only help preserve marsh quality across the bay. So the big problem is with all the people living along the bay with seawalls. Where will the water go? Where will the marshes go? And in the case of Metacomet, the marshes have the opportunity to migrate inland, and that's very important for the health of the bay. For several decades ahead, Metacomet could be a place where marshes could migrate and sustain the habitats of the bay. End quote. To be continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Brewer, if I may,
Yeah,
I
please.
just want to clarify one thing that was said, Mrs. Seal. With regard to Mr. Spalding's testimony at that July 20th meeting, I explicitly asked him which of the two votes that we were to make that night, either rezone or not rezone, would have a bigger impact on climate change, and he answered that he did not know. So I don't think saying that we disregarded his testimony is correct. And again, I will point out, I did ask him to clarify whether he was Mr. Spalding or Dr. Spalding. He clarified he's Mr. Spalding. So I just want to set that right, that we did not disregard his testimony that night. In fact, I specifically asked him a question about his testimony, and his response was that he did not know.
So could I just,
If I may.
I need to respond to that. I want to caution the council, KMG is suing the city of East Providence in Superior Court. The issues that we just talked about what the council did and did not consider, it will be key in deciding the case. So I would caution the council not to get into any long-running debate or really any type of testimony regarding what was said or not said. The record will speak for itself. KMG has decided, which is their absolute right to sue us, and we have to let that process play out. And this is not the place or the time to play out what was said or not said, or what was understood or not understood by this council, or in fact by KMG. So I respect your right to be here today to talk about the mitigation plan, but I'm going to caution this council not to engage in any kind of discussion regarding the lawsuit or what could or could not happen with the golf course. Thank you.
May I respond?
Sure.
I specifically in my statement did not mention your vote on rezoning, that it was a public hearing. I only said that he appeared here in July. I did not quote from his testimony that night. I quoted from a video that was separate. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Hello, Heather Andrade, Wampanoag Trail, one of the leaders of Keep Metacomet Green. So I'm continuing Candy's story. Professor Spalding remarks on saving the bay. My whole orientation on this issue is as much about the future as it is about today, when we clean up a water body like the Narragansett Bay or the Providence River and have it be much better than it was decades ago. We have menhaden coming up the bay. We have striped bass. The reviving raptor population in the upper bay depends on that Metacomet property. We've had tremendous restoration and recovery. Now we're seeing the recovery of a whole ecosystem, both water and land, coming together. We don't save the bay and not worry about the land. When you spend billions, literally, to clean up the Providence River, you should be trying to acquire the open spaces along the water. Professor Spalding continues, we've got to save every last green space that we have. It's already so heavily paved over. Let's conserve what we have. Let's not pave anymore. Let's use what we have, repurpose what we have. There are certainly a lot of open and paved over spaces that can be repurposed for economic use. So let's do that instead of paving over green areas. It's ecological science. It's been a challenge of mine to get people to think about the whole system. The bay is not just the water. No, it's a connected ecology. The open space of Metacomet and the Narragansett Bay and the wildlife that uses the space. About excessive heat, Professor Spalding says, we are going to be much warmer here by 2050. The air temperature will go up. The climate will be a lot like New Jersey or even Maryland by then. There's something called the heat island effect. Urban places are going to be much warmer. A place like Metacomet has a cooling effect on a community, and it's a large area, so it has a big cooling effect. It's like having an air conditioner, because at night it can cool the area, as opposed to if it was paved, it holds the heat. Things never cool down, so they heat up again the next day. Environmental protection has been Professor Spaulding's life work. Listen to him. Save the Bay, save Metacomet. You all have it within your power to make it happen. Just do it. And I just want to reiterate that Keep Metacomet Green is here to save the green land, not necessarily the golf course. We want the land saved for our residents, and for climate change is coming. You need to pay attention. Thank you.
Next person.
East Providence Urban Forest. And I have a little PowerPoint presentation just to be a little visual. So we'd like to just recommend, it looks like the city has started, you could go to the next one, to consider the role of trees in EP's hazard mitigation plan. You can go to the next one. So our tree equity score is 85. It's not good to be high. We need 13,350 more trees, according to American Forest, to reach the optimal goal of 75. If you could go, this is a little bit of they're saying that we had 2.2% of our tree canopy added. But if you look at the bottom, the runoff that's avoided by what we have now is over 14,000 cubic meters. And then the rain interception, which is what stops the rain from going into our drains and stops flooding, is close to 50,000. But that's still fairly low. But just to give you a little bit of the value of the urban forest that we have now. So our recommendation is that annual tree planting target is established in the hazard mitigation plan with dedicated budget, because there's no point in saying you're going to plant trees if you don't have a budget for it. So to reach the goal in 5 years, because we don't have too much time. So our urban forest protects against flooding. So there's a lot of research, but this is an EPA document that I would recommend that the city look at, called Stormwater to Street Trees. They reduce stormwater runoff. They promote infiltration of the rainwater into the soil. They store runoff. That's all about flooding. So our recommendation is specific targets to recognize and protect existing, what they call stormwater trees. Those are the street trees, should be included in the hazard mitigation plan specifically. This is the Rhode Island DEM's East Providence heat island map. As you can, the orange areas are basically where there's very few trees and a lot of impervious surfaces. So you can expect those areas to be very hot in the summer, in extreme heat periods, and also to flood. So that heat island map should be included in the hazard mitigation plan to guide where we need more trees. A well-maintained urban forest protects against wind damage, and that's kind of funny because people always think that trees fall down and that they're the hazard. But if you have research shows evenly spaced trees form windbreaks or buffers from high winds and actually protect buildings. That's kind of a funny little fact there, but it's true. We'd ask that you follow the Rhode Island DEM storm mitigation template. This is the name of the Community Forest Storm Mitigation Planning. It's quite a good document. That would be great if the city followed that. Trees are considered a high priority. There's tree risk mitigation, lots of information. They have templates, which includes pruning, cabling. I mean, if you prune your urban forest, if you maintain your urban forest, which is something that we have very little capacity to do right now, then you have fewer trees falling down. You have fewer limbs falling on cars. In the long term, you have to have an established tree care budget, right? We have set out, from what I understand, $25,000, which is the minimum that you have to be a Tree City USA. That is not nearly enough. I'm glad to hear that our EP Urban Forest helped to organize the volunteer-led tree inventory. People went out this summer and looked at those trees, but we need a species selection guidelines for developers. We need routine mulching and soil aeration. They have it in this wonderful community forest storm mitigation plan template, so I suggest you look at that. Next. Oh yeah, and if you would just enforce our street tree ordinance, I know that there's going to be, the mayor says we have a tree warden, and I'm thrilled with that. I just hope that that tree warden, it will be doing what the city forester is supposed to be doing in our tree ordinance. This was in 2012. We've had one before. It's not funded now. We need one because the city forester plants, directs, regulates, and controls the protection, maintenance, removal, and planting of all trees. Otherwise, it's very hodgepodge, and it's not going to be done. A city forester would be an essential part of the city administration. We funded it before. We're going to be asking that you do that again. And if you want to put that in the hazard mitigation plan, we're all for that too. So thank you very much. If you have any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you know, over there, do you know, sorry, do you know where the the Bullocks Point tree project, you know how far we are as a city? And where we
Well,
stand?
my understanding is, I mean, we did do those 4 trees at the library as part of that, and the city did open it up to, which was wonderful, for private landowners, and I believe that's still open, that any private landowner who is along, anywhere in the city, but along Bullocks Point, Bullocks Avenue, could get a city tree for free on their property. I think that the hold-off, as usual, is that the DOT, it's not a city road. So the I don't know where that is. You know, that's its own beast.
3 years ago, prior to taking office, I did contact the DOT. They did allow the planting, and Mr. Fazioli knows about the application process. All we had to do was pay for the trees and plant them ourselves. So that's a question I'm asking, where we are with that project. If you,
Well, I
know.
think that this spring we're supposed to be planting some more trees, right? That's the plan. So, but I have to say that, you know, every time we say we need more trees, and we certainly do, it is very fair to say that the city needs the capacity to do so, and they need the budget for it. Because we just can't be adding trees for the few people that work in Parks Department and have to do everything else on top of it all. So it is we have to have the policy, and then we have to fund the policy.
Ms. Tierney?
Oh, hello.
May I ask that you take that presentation and send it to Mr. Barnes at the address that he
Yeah,
gave
I'd
us
like
earlier?
to meet Mr. Barnes, actually. So yeah, I
Okay.
definitely will.
Thank you.
And I'll send it to all of you just for the fun of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tierney, I just want to mention too, we want to thank you for the work that you and the Tree Commission is doing with your meetings. I know you guys have them monthly, and you guys come up with a lot of good stuff. I haven't made the one recently, but I certainly plan to be on it next month, since the date is a lot more convenient. So I appreciate the work that everybody is doing, including our planning department, in trying to address these issues that we're going through.
Okay. That concludes proclamations and presentations. You may proceed. Oh, we got more? Oh, sure.
My name's Linda Lee. I'm from Riverside. And I've lived here about 25 years. And it just seems like within the past 5 or 6 years, the flooding has been crazy. At the bottom of the Metacomet Hill on Veterans Parkway, I went through water about 50. Our basement has been flooding. Then Crescent Park, a lot of the trees have fallen in. I'm sure that's partly from erosion. The bike path, the water is way up. A couple of huge trees we noticed on the bike path had fallen into the water. And the seas are rising. And I think Metacomet should be saved, because that might be all we have left. The water might go right over the bike path at some point. That's the one place we have to go and enjoy nature, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak? No one? Okay, that concludes proclamations and presentations. Thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. Dominic, good job. Bon. Next item, please.
Next item would be public comment. We have one more gentleman.
Okay. Chris Costa, is it? 49 Tower Avenue?
That's correct.
Regarding the skate park?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so, good evening. So yeah, I'm here to talk about the skate park lights. Recently, they've been shut off, and I was told that they're gonna be off until April. And I just don't think that's a great decision for the community, because this is the only place these kids have. Like, there's 4 skate parks in Rhode Island that has lights, which means in the winter, as it gets dark at 4 p.m., there's only 4 options, pretty much. East Providence is one of them. The other one is downtown Providence, which is a pretty sketchy area, to be honest. I've seen a lot of bad things go on there. And the other 2 are in Wakefield and North Kingston. So a lot of these kids just can't get over there, and they have nowhere to skate. So if you're closing down the lights for 5 months, you're basically giving these kids 2 options. They're either going to be home all night, or they're going to be out in the streets. So if they're out in the streets, they're going to be skating businesses, private properties, trespassing, destroying property, things that you don't want, you know, and the police department is going to have to deal with kicking these kids out, as opposed to just maybe sending another patrol by the skate park, you know, once a night to check on it or something. I think that would be a better use of resources. And also, like, the darkening of the park leads to more, you know, unsavory activity. If the park is lit up and there's a lot of people there, there's less likely to be things happening. I've personally, every time I've been there, which I frequent there a lot, never seen anything bad happen. It's always been a very safe environment. The older kids are very good to the younger kids. They teach them tricks and, you know, make sure they're okay if they fall and things like that. I've seen a lot of support from the community, cleaning up the ramps, fixing the ramps. I've seen kids show up with screwdrivers to, you know, screw down the wood. It's just been a very positive thing for the community, and I don't think that shutting that down for 5 months is the best idea, because these kids are going to have nowhere else to go. And in a time where, you know, we want our kids to be active and we want them to be healthy, both physically and mentally, you're taking away, you know, the one thing that they love in their life, and there's nowhere else for them to do it without getting in trouble. So, you know, that would be my main argument, is to keep kids, you know, in the park and off the street, so their parents at least know where they are, and they're not roaming around and doing illegal activities. So, because that's how I had to grow up. I didn't have a skate park, so I was in the streets all the time. It's, you know, it's hard to learn. You're constantly getting, you know, yelled at, kicked out. The ground's not made for skating and biking. So I just really think this park's been really positive for a lot of these kids. I see the same kids there year round. If it's a usage issue that you're worried about, there's kids that dig through the snow and shovel out parts of the park so they can skate in the winter. That's how dedicated they are. There are kids there year round. So yeah, all in all, I just to say, you know, let's keep the lights on and keep the kids out of the streets.
So what was your name again, sir?
Chris Costa.
Chris Costa. Nice to meet you, Chris.
Nice to meet you.
So I think one of the issues that you bring up really has to do with our policy. So currently our parks policy is dusk till dawn with using of the park. And so naturally, you know, in the winter, that time gets cut by 4 hours, so pretty much. So now you have this gap of no time. So that's probably one of the areas that as a council we can look at to try to provide an area for people to still utilize the public parks, you know, either walking their dogs, being out in the, you know, we're doing all the lights over in a lot of the parks throughout the city, changing them to LED so it is brighter and safer and more community friendly. So I think that portion, once those lights get in, because we do want well-lit areas if we're going to be keeping the parks open for use, so for safety reasons, right? So we want to keep everybody safe if they're going to be taking a walk down a trail in any of the parks, or sitting there studying, or just clearing their mind, meditating, whatever that case may be. So for me, I think it's addressing the hours. So dusk to dawn is okay in the summer and spring hours because it's appropriate timing, you know, 8:30, 9 o'clock, potentially. In the winter, it does pose a significant time discrepancy for a lot of people because of dusk is now at 4:15, whatever the case may be, and that's extremely early in the evening, giving people no time to enjoy the rest of their day, whether they've gotten home from work or school activities, and just want to be out and about, especially now with this winter coming and snow and being able to do all that fun outdoor stuff in the city park. So I would like to look at that ordinance, city solicitor, if we could bring that up and work on some adjustments with language modification for the winter. And certainly with the lighting being changed in the parks, I feel a lot safer having the parks open later in the nighttime, in the winter. So that would be my resolve for that.
There is great lighting. It's, you know, they
Well,
paid a
Central
lot to
Park,
install.
correct.
The Central, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but the other parks not so great at the current moment.
Exactly.
So I'd
yeah.
want, so if Central Park is well lit, which it is, but other parks aren't, and we're saying all city parks have the potential to be open to the public, I want them to be equally as safe and well lit for all of the
Understood, yeah.
residents in the
Understood.
community. Yeah.
And
We have-
sorry,
Go ahead.
just to bring up too, this is the first year this has happened. Ever since the park is open, it's been open year round. I've been there year round, so this is a new thing. Just to bring that up as well.
We have a tendency of thinking that all outdoor activities begin in the spring and end, early fall, when people, take to the parks in the wintertime as well and utilize the parks as well. And I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that should be looked into, to be quite honest with you. Even if it's just a skate park, I don't mind, or other parks as well, but it's something that, activities, outdoor activities is not only in the spring and summertime, it's in the wintertime as well. People work all day and they like to get out, especially during the time that we have COVID and we have this pandemic. People don't want to be trapped in the house all day. And we should have these places available for the residents to utilize and take advantage of as well. So I think it's something that we should look into. So thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. President, if I was gonna ask Dan a question. Does the timing of that have anything to do with our light upgrade from HPS to LED?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
I'm gonna look into this and I'll get back to the council.
Okay. And those would be, I presume, so those lights, I'm looking at it from overhead, I know there's lights in the basketball court, but there are lights on the parking lot side of the skate park?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'll look into the timing. Get back to you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that concludes public comments at this time. Deputy Clerk, you may proceed on to the next item.
The next item will be council members. The first item is the sale of Lot 3 ExxonMobil, including the Riverside Little League Field, Plat 610, Block 1, Lot 001. Councilman Morado, discussion only.
So 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, I received several phone calls from residents when they saw that ExxonMobil, in addition to the other 2 lots that they're selling, they're also selling lot number 3, which includes the Riverside Little League field. So that was the first I heard of that field being sold in addition to the other lots by ExxonMobil. I did place a call into the broker that has that listing, and what he told me was that the city has been in discussions for quite a while now with ExxonMobil. And to be honest with you, I know nothing about. That was the first time I'm hearing. I have never heard of this property going up for sale. I've been in discussions with Riverside Little League Committee. They were unaware of it too. And I'm putting this on the docket tonight because apparently Councilman Rodrick and Councilman Cahoon, you guys seem to know more about this field and the sale of it than I do. And I would really appreciate that you share that information with me, especially me being, the representative of Ward 4 that represents that field.
Yeah, I don't know that we know any more about the sale than you do. I think I got a call about the same time you did. My kids play on that field, and I coach with those coaches, and I've coached those kids, and I grew up on those fields, et cetera. So a lot of those people, we still have those same connections. And they reach out to me and ask me, and I said, I didn't know either. And they actually told me that you had been in touch with the broker and confirmed that they were planning to sell that lot. I know that we subsequently had a meeting with members of the Riverside Little League. I was talking to some folks from over there. I know Mr. Rodrick was there. The mayor was over there. And they had a representative from ExxonMobil who was talking to them about their commitment to making sure that the parks remain. So they talked about working with developers to make sure that if a developer purchases the land, there is some kind of agreement in place to either keep the fields where they are or to find another location for the fields. They were sensitive to the idea that the league cannot go, a year or 2 years having no place to play over there. There's not a whole lot of major-sized fields in Riverside, so that was part of what was going back and forth. And I think the ExxonMobil folks were going back with the sense of, that they really need to take steps to make sure there's a field there or multiple fields there. So I don't know, Councilman Roderick, if you had additional perspective on that.
Not too much additional. I will say this. I think this council in the past has been briefed about the tax situation at Mobile, so that wasn't new, that they were not taxed properly by the city in the past before all of us. And what's that? Assessed. They were assessed too much, and there was an agreement which I believe we all voted on. And subsequently, I've been working with Mobile Exxon for over a year. Again, a topic I brought up here, and I think you helped me a little bit, Councilman. You had some suggestions about the trail. My specific suggestion about a year ago was, and this was before any talk of a sale came up, that we need to open an access road from 4th Street, that it is absolutely horrendous that the only entrance and exit to the Forbes Street Little League field, now known as the Ron Silver complex, was from that trail, with cars going by at 60, 70 miles an hour. So I've been involved with that for quite a while. I've also been involved with that complex since about 1987 as a coach, as an official with the league. So I've had a lot of involvement. Why I say that is why they've worked with me. And Riverside Little League called me a day or so before this meeting and said, would I be able to attend the meeting? I had received no call from the city administration about it. So set up by Little League with me. You're right when you say the real estate ad introduced confusion to the area, because in my talks for over a year with them, it was never said that the Little League fields were going to be displaced or sold. So the Mobile Exxon representative, woman's name, his first name is Amy, said, we absolutely commit that we are not that the city will not lose those Little League fields. So there is potential that, and it's their private land that they're selling, there's potential that a buyer might buy some of the land where the fields are on or nearby, but in that case, they will be relocated to what the league officials thought might be a better solution, would be pushed inside the parcel more away from Wampanoag Trail and access from Forbes Street. So she said in any event, the fields will not be lost. At worst case, they might be moved, and you will keep all 3 of them. In fact, there was a lot of discussion about how it would be better. Fields would be better, probably have a small concession stand with bathroom, which they don't have a bathroom now. In terms of why, this was a surprise, and I don't know, and yeah, you represent that area. I have no problem, of course, and I have talked to you about this in the past, not the sale, but about the situation. But I certainly am not going to back away from a league, and I represent the whole city, which is the reason I ran at large, not to represent a ward or a neighborhood or a field. I represent all of East Providence with all of you, and my answer to the league when they invited me to that meeting was not going to be no, I won't come. So I was there. That's the information they gave me. The league was very impressed that night and came away understanding that they're not losing their fields, and if anything happens, it'll be an improvement. But we did vote as a council on this wrongful tax assessment issue. So we were aware somewhat that Mobile does not need all of this land anymore. And some of it, I think, is across the street, which is a wetlands. They can't do much there.
Okay, so your analysis of, your statement of that we knew because the tax sale was completely inaccurate for this discussion of the sale of the Little League field.
Well, I'll differ.
Hold on, let me finish. My turn. We also know that,
Sure.
when was the last time we trust a developer, all right? We have the opportunity right now to potentially purchase this land, and we should be looking into doing that. If the land isn't what they so-called brownfields, and a few months ago when I met with that committee, the plan was to try to reallocate funds to planting more trees and fix the fence and stuff. And I tried very hard to get permission from Mobile, but they simply don't return their calls, because you can't dig a hole on that field without their permission. So to plant a tree would be a violation of the agreement. What I was told by that broker was that the city has been in communications with Riverside Little League of the sale of that league for months, trying to work out a deal. If someone was to buy that property, keeping the Little League field there, if someone was to buy that property, doing an easement onto Forbes Street. If that's the case, why don't they just deed that land over to us? And then there's no dispute. So any developer that buys that land won't go back on their word, and we're safe.
That's what she said they would do. Deed
That's
the
not what
fields.
The broker told me. So
Well, I
what
don't
I'm
know
trying
if
to
the
say is
broker is on the same page as the owner, but
what I'm trying to say is the broker represents the owner, that's the client. But what I'm trying to say is we have an opportunity right now to potentially buy that field. And if it's buildable land, which it appears to be, why not put the rec center that the city has been wanting for all these years in that spot?
Yeah.
And I'll even go further, soccer complexes and stuff, away from everybody and everything, if that's the case.
well, we don't have to buy it. They're going to give it to us. The fields, Little League fields. I don't know about soccer complex or bigger space, but in terms of what Riverside has now, the Mobile representative said they have no interest in keeping that or having the city lose those fields.
The broker told me that if the city's interested, like everybody else, they can put in a non-disclosure agreement and they can purchase that land for $2 million.
Oh, sure, that's another topic.
So they're not giving it for free, they want us to buy it.
If we want to buy it, we can have that discussion. I'm just telling you why.
That's why I put it on.
All right, and
Like to start leaning on.
you questioned the meeting, I'm telling you why I was there.
One of the questions I asked him, Councilman Morato, and this representative from ExxonMobil said she was gonna go find out. I said, if you look at that map and there's like, 1, 2, 3, 4 that crosses the border into Massachusetts. I said, I asked her if they're for sale independently or if it's all just, all 4 parcels. And she said, I guess it would depend on the offers that we get, but she was gonna go and get some more information and let us know.
All I'm saying is that we potentially have an opportunity to purchase that land, right? We can, keep the Little League field, we can build other stuff on it if it's ours. It'll be the perfect location versus, like Grassy Plains, for example. Easy on and off, access. We can do the access road to Forbes Street. There's a lot of potential there. And I would like to be included, being that's in my ward. And 2, are we doing that? Are we looking at that as a city, or are we gonna let that opportunity slip by? That's all I'm saying. And how do we get to those points? How do we get to, continuing that conversation?
Yeah, if there's a suggestion that the city buy this mobile property, we'll talk about it. I'm not against that.
So why don't we start that conversation? Mr. Solicitor, do you have any ideas how that conversation has started?
I would begin with the mayor's office. I know, I just wanted to clarify the record. This council voted for a settlement agreement with ExxonMobil because our own appraiser said we had that land tax of about $10 million too high over a 10-year period, and this was a tax assessment that predates me and goes back 10 years, if you recall. And part of that settlement agreement was that ExxonMobil was going to sell, or at least market. They had a affirmative duty to market what they considered to be excess property to get it back onto the tax rolls to offset the loss that we took for the assessment, because I think the potential exposure was, I think, about $8 million that we would have owed them, or 10, I can't remember what it was, but, so that was part of the settlement agreement that we asked the council to approve, which they did approve. And so part of that agreement was for them to settle, to try to market the excess land. Nothing prevents the city from wanting to buy that land if you want to buy it.
Do we know what the sale price is? I mean, I know the.
I have no idea. This is the first I'm hearing that. I knew it was for sale, but I didn't understand. I was first I'm hearing about the Little League, but.
Is there any way we can find out what the sale price is, what they're marketing it for?
When you spoke to the broker, do you know what the price
He
is?
said $2 million.
Okay.
2 million for what? The whole
Lot 3.
4 parcels or parcel 3?
Parcel 3 only.
Well, according to, we looked this up because we had put this on the agenda. So the field is actually on plat 610, block 1, lot 001, not lot 3. I don't know.
Well, they're marketing as lot 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they're about, but our assessment is that's how we categorize
Look
it.
at their map, that whole lot 3, that call it lot 3, encompasses the Little League field all the way to 4th Street and further into Providence.
There's a 30-acre rectangle, right?
Yeah.
That runs north to south terminating at Forbes Street. The Little League fields are basically right in the middle of the rectangle on 3, parcel 3.
So they potentially looking to subdivide that property depending on what the negotiations, the purchase is?
What they said was it'd be subject to whatever offers they got.
Is there any way we can get information as to what's going on with that,
Well, I mean, I don't understand
where we are at this point? Discussion with Mobile and Mobile Exxon. Apparently, the administration's been talking to Mobile Exxon.
I'm not aware of that.
But if they have, is there any way that the council
Yeah, I mean, I think
can be part of this conversation, get this information as to what's been going on to this point?
I'm certainly, as the Director of Administration, I'm not aware of any discussions. I certainly am not aware of any purchase of the property by the city, but I know that the land is for sale if the city's interested in buying it, and the council wants us to explore buying it. I guess they could ask us to explore buying it and find out where we can get the money, but it's up to the council to. But
certainly, we could do that.
I'm not aware of any meetings.
I don't know of any conversation to buy land from ExxonMobil, but
I never said there's a conversation to buy. I said there has been conversations as far as the sale of that land. And it was to include whoever buys the land to keep the Little League field, to create a potential easement. I'm asking that, we look into buying the land. I'm asking.
Okay, I understand.
So, I mean, I think we may have an opportunity. I mean, depending on if the land is contaminated, as they have been saying for years. I mean, if it is, we don't want that responsibility, but I would like to know that. Is that the case? Buyer beware, right? Whoever, the broker must have all of this information. This is the land, this is what it consists of. You buy it, this is what you need to do. You need to do mitigation, whatever. I'd like to know that. And maybe we can have a discussion as to, what would be that sale price? The broker gave me a sale price.
the broker answer your questions, so those other details about the land?
No, I didn't ask him about, if it's a Brownsfield or whatnot.
Is that something, I'm asking because I don't know. Would that be something that you could ask them?
Of course.
Okay. All right.
We'll get the
details on what the broker puts out for the listing, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next item is response to former city clerk Samantha Burnett's public communications. Council Vice President Rodrick, discussion only.
Regarding the former city clerk's recent irrational, slanderous tirade against me personally, I had intended to answer her crazy accusations point by point. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make a couple of brief comments. It's a shame we are at this point, and we're talking about this, especially on Christmas week. I had to, so I'm just going to make a few comments. I had to keep family members from coming here tonight, and a host of friends and constituents who have known me all my life and have said, I tell you right now, I had to keep my wife at home tonight and say, you're not coming and you're not speaking. And she said, I need to be there and say some things. And I vetoed that idea.
Councilman, I just have a question.
Sure. Well, can I finish? And I won't get into all the details. I'll say a couple specific things. One can certainly not edit a forwarded email attachment, and it certainly wasn't done. I'm not going to say some of this brief stuff even that I listed. Let me just say that every single thing in that social media statement was absolutely false. I have reams of proof to back that up, and I thought we were going to just move ahead. And I have so much more to say and verify on the basis of a lot of advice. I will let it go. It's on to Cincinnati. If you don't know that reference, call Bill Belichick. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilwoman?
I just wanted to, I want to thank you for keeping it short and brief. I don't think that this is the platform to make those types of, discussions or have that type of discussion. I just wanted to, and though I can understand and appreciate why you would want to use this as an opportunity to publicly say things, I think that there are better outlets to do that. Besides the city chambers, where we're supposed to be doing actual city business. With that being said, again, I appreciate you not making it a longer, drawn-out conversation, and you can use other platforms to do what you need to do.
Yeah, thanks for that. I disagree, though. The person used this platform when she came and spoke. And
But that would have been the time to have that conversation, but that person isn't here, and this isn't a Jerry Springer show, and I'd like the decorum of the council to be respectful. And if it's city business, then I think that we should talk about city business. If it's not, then I don't think it's appropriate place, because any one of us then could use this as a platform to say, well, I didn't really appreciate that. I didn't, that somebody said this and somebody said that, or that I didn't get included on something that was city business.
Well,
so
I'm sorry, you're belaboring it. I'm not. My family name was besmirched. And if you want me to go into more detail, I will. I'm trying to end it.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It is slander on his character, and I will attest to his character that he is nothing that what was portrayed in that social media tyrant. It was just, it's sad that it's gotten to this point that here we are once again having this discussion. We talked about it briefly in executive session. We did say that we're not going to belabor this, but it's gotten to this point where you're that desperate, and these are the things you have to come out and say about individuals on the council, because there is a disagreement. So you have to take a man's character with no proof whatsoever, and there are people who've known him since his childhood who could attest to his character. And then you got someone who comes up, who's known him for probably the last 5 years and wants to take that down. I think it's a shame, again, that we're here having this conversation. And I'll speak my piece at some point in time with respect to all the other things that are being said on social media about all the false lies that are out there. And they're blatantly lies.
With the councilwoman's point, we are public servants, and if we can't take the heat, then you should get out of the kitchen, right? I've been bashed over here at, by people at this podium about, grassy plains. Did I respond? I did not respond. I get bashed on social media sometimes for some of my voting decisions. I don't put it on the docket and have a conversation about it. So there's proper place and time, and this is not the proper place and time.
It's not about taking the heat. I mean, you could take the heat, But at some point in time, you have to prove that that person is wrong. And if they're gonna start spilling false allegations the way they have been lately, for example, today, talking about tax increase for 3% that we voted on. We did not vote on a 3% tax increase, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but these are the ridiculous things that are being said constantly and all the time. Anything further, Councilman?
Not a thing
Okay.
at this time.
Let's
Thank you.
proceed to the next item, please.
Yes, sir. Item 3 is discussion and information regarding traffic light cameras, implementation, and costs. Councilwoman Souza, discussion only.
Thank you. So items 3 and 4 are almost simultaneous in that they kind of run into each other. So if the council doesn't mind, I'd like to just take them both at the same time.
I split them up just to make it clear on the docket.
Yeah, sure, I appreciate that. But they kind of all intertwine with each other. So I had reached out to find out more information, only because, you know, information can get lost in emails with the abundance of emails that comes through. And there's been a lot of questions in the community as to, you know, cameras. There's just that all of a sudden we're in the year of the camera going up and being installed, and then we just had a recent meeting of potentially 16 additional cameras for a total of 32 cameras going to, you know, at some point within the next 12 months around the city. So I just wanted to go over, and again, I'm not an attorney, so reading long contracts is not my forte. So, and I don't get, you know, briefed or counseled on the extensive contracts that we look at or are sent to us. So having gone through some of them, I just wanted to, I had a few questions that I hadn't noticed previously but have now, and I just wanted to know if they were, I know we've signed a contract, so we can't go back obviously on the contract because we are in a, I believe it's a 5-year term, right, with the company, but some things that came up that were red flags to me or items of concern. So one, vehicles that are not subject to being tagged. Now, I could see where someone would agree that they shouldn't be tagged, but if they're a violation and we're citing the lane person, the resident of the city, then nobody should be excluded unless it's an emergency vehicle. And per the information that I was sent, thank you from the administration, Mr. Gonzalez, for forwarding some of this information. Government vehicles and those who have diplomatic tags are excluded from any of speeding or red light camera violations. Now, I don't know if that is because there's a federal statute that also precludes them from getting any tickets.
Go ahead, finish, okay.
No, go.
Oh, sorry, so diplomatic immunity is a federal law, and so diplomats
I figured
are,
that one
yeah,
probably would be, but.
diplomats are exempt because under the theory that a foreign country, a country like ours, or if Americans in a foreign land could be, you know, be subject to harassment, tickets and whatnot. So it's generally diplomatic immunity applies to any foreign national who's here on official diplomatic businesses. So that's why they would exclude that. I think that mirrors federal law.
And government vehicles?
The federal government, we wouldn't really tax the federal government, you know, but again, I don't know how many, I think that would be the federal government, not state government, but
Well,
but
municipal.
I will tell you, municipal, we certainly, and in fact, we have met with the union representatives and we have indicated it's a policy of the city that if you are in a city vehicle and you're speeding, you will be responsible for that ticket. So that doesn't apply to city employees. In fact, city employees are required under the personnel code in our personnel book to obey all traffic laws and signals. So to the extent that they get a ticket for speeding in a school zone or go through a red light, they will be responsible for the ticket.
Right, because they're assigned to certain vehicles.
Correct.
And then in this
Correct. We actually,
contract, it says that there's a transfer of citation. So if you're in a leased vehicle,
Correct.
it wouldn't go to the leasing company, it would go then to the person who rented the vehicle.
correct. And we did meet with the DPW director to go over that, and we then had the meeting with the unions. And mostly it's DPW workers who use, you know, city trucks and whatnot.
Sure.
So that's doesn't apply to that exemption that you read would not apply to city employees.
So what happens for situations where, you know, we have, because we do have funeral homes that are in areas that are now going to be surrounded by these red light signals, you know, citation lights. So in a motorcade from a funeral home, they typically go through like the red lights, so they follow. They don't usually stop and then go, you know, wait for the red light and then try to catch up to the rest of the funeral. How are we taking that into account? Or do we have a plan for?
Yes, yeah. Our officers review every single ticket, so they would be able to exclude those as they are allowed to do that by law.
Okay. And then some of it was the pricing. So in the contract, it mentioned, so if you're, it's a speed camera in the school zone is $50. If the red light violation is $85. We're renting the cameras for roughly 12 to 1,800 or 1,700 per camera per month. But then there's like a $7 in addition to your citation as a percentage. So I'm trying to figure out, like, it seems like, you know, when you get a bill and you say, well, this is what I'm buying, right, and it's $85. Then here come all these like little service fees that are associated. So now the ticket's no longer $85, but, you know, $105 because we've just bopped you over the head with all these other little fees to pay for the cost of the lights, municipality percentage.
Besides court costs, if someone was to challenge the ticket, I'm not aware of additional fees, but I'll double check that.
Yeah, so the two papers that I have, there are some conflicting numbers, so I did want to look at that a little bit more and then maybe have another conversation.
Can I ask what you're looking at?
So
Maybe I
I'm
have
looking at the database and systems, so maybe it's easier if I show it to you. So we have the resolution that has, you know, 9, 12 pages, 16 pages, sorry, to be exact, of language, and then a 9-page. It looks like it was something that would have been sent after the initial resolution that went into a little bit more detail of the notification.
That was passed by the city council, which was resolution 107, including the entire contract and all the addendums at it. So this resolution, the contract you're referring to, was attached to the resolution for the council to consider when it was voted on. So I don't want to say that we gave you a contract after the fact. No, it's not my policy.
No, that's not what I was saying.
No, but I'm saying the contract in its totality, with all the addendums, was given to the council when the resolution was put before you. It's my practice to attach all contracts to the resolution so you guys can read it and understand it and ask questions if you have it at the time.
Sure. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that you said that. And it does mention in the second part that it also includes amendments that are in the resolution. So just for residents to be clear on how the process, because a lot of questions have asked, you know, about my license, about my insurance. All of the conversations that this council has had in regards to traffic safety is just for that, right? It is for the safety of our pedestrians, it's the safety of our students, it's the safety of our other vehicles.
Absolutely.
Now, reading into the contract, obviously there is a lot of funds to be gained for those who do not adhere to said rules and regulations. I am not of the mindset that we should, you know, I don't like to be taxing individuals. I don't like to penalize individuals, though I understand that there is a need to, you know, correct behavior. I do and continually will advocate for the city to use other traffic calming measures that we have consistently engaged conversation about and that we have allocated substantial funds for, that I don't think the city has started using, to the best of my knowledge, yet throughout the community, though we are putting up 32 cameras in the community. Now, Chief, if there are other traffic calming measures that are in place that I'm unaware of, I'd certainly be interested in knowing what they are and where they might be located.
So I can't speak completely to that. I wasn't prepared to completely address that.
Sure.
Just to back up a little bit, the additional cameras are going to be 10 intersections and 23 cameras on those intersections. So I just wanted to be clear on that. DPW did do a lot of the purchasing of the, those newer speed signs that say thank you and all that. They do occasionally work with our traffic unit in the deployment of those. I can't speak to right now exactly where they are. It's information I could absolutely get, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure, Jan, and I have seen them, a couple
Sure.
of them, and I know we had ordered and we're waiting for some to come.
Yeah, so the last time we spoke, we obviously deployed the 6 that we had first purchased as a pilot to determine if they were worth the money, right?
Sure.
We then placed an additional order for 18 that have actually come in as of last week. They were back ordered for like 14 weeks or something like that. So we've identified some areas, and we're hopefully, after the holidays, January 1st, we'll hopefully start implementing those citywide when I have more staff available to get those signs up. So just to give you some rough numbers as to what we've spent out of traffic calming, if you're looking for that. Encumbered, we have about, as of today, $62,000 in whole numbers. We've paid out $17,000 of that 62. And the remainder is obviously the signs we just got in, with a remaining balance of just shy of 138,000 left in that account.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate the numbers. So just so the public knows, in regards to the ticketing, so it is a citation that then gets, and I know we've talked about this on other occasions, that gets sent. First it goes to the company sends it to the police department checks it, verifies it, and then makes a determination after obviously the grace period of warnings to then issue a citation to the vehicle.
That's correct.
The owner or driver of the vehicle can either pay the citation or they can contest it at municipal court.
That's correct.
And then based, I guess, on whatever the judge decides, they then either, pay plus some more fees. If they are not paid within or make any contact within the 60 days, there are percentage fees that get added to them. And then eventually it goes into collection by the company.
Yes, the company handles that.
Right,
yeah.
right, the city doesn't. The company will then send it into a collection, put into a collection process. There's an additional, 18+% on top of what your original ticket was. And then subsequently, besides, obviously credit issues that may arise because it's in collection, they will be sending that information to the DMV, which will then affect your renewal of your vehicle. So for, people to be aware that it does not affect your license, nor does it affect your insurance, but it will have an effect on your credit and your ability to re-register your vehicle when the time is necessary. Did I cover that?
Yeah, like any other violation, you can't just ignore it. It's not just going to go away.
Right. Okay. That was it. I just wanted people to be aware that was, really a lot of what the background stuff is. And I know we've talked about it in some of the other meetings, but I know people forget things that we've talked about. And sometimes, rightfully, I'll admit I do too, because we're all human and there's a lot of information. So that is the information. I'm grateful to hear that we're doing the other implementations with the DPW with the signs, because I think that is very helpful for people, more so than a ticket, because some people are okay with getting a ticket and just paying the money, and they're not going to pay attention to the lights. And others are very cognitive of it, and they're like, I don't, my $85 is better spent on a dinner at Capriccio's, whatever. So I'm glad we still have funds, and so I'd be, interested in wanting to work with the council to continue looking for other options. And hopefully in the 5 years, we won't need to continue with the camera in the community, that we can move away from that type of fee.
Chief? Yes. This has been asked before, and I keep forgetting to look, but I can look tonight. Southbound, heading towards Bayview, Duckett Ave, are those signs posted in that direction?
Southbound.
I know it's north. I know northbound. I can see it.
There's only a camera northbound.
Okay.
So there is no camera southbound.
Okay, so they're not, if you're going towards, into Riverside, they're not picking up plates?
That's correct. It's only northbound.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any
Thank
other
you,
further
Chief, for
questions?
coming out.
Nothing? Thank you, Chief. Next item, please.
So we did 3 and 4 together. We're gonna move to new business, mayor communications with Director Gonzalez.
Good evening, season's greetings to everyone. The first item under Mayor Communications is going to be the appointment. We're looking for the appointment to be confirmed for John Barone for the canvassing board. He's a 20-year member of Rumford. He also does a lot of work within the community. He's a retired floral manager. This is for fulfilling a unexpired term.
At the pleasure of the council. It does.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Confirmation, yep.
Sorry, I was looking at number 2 for a
Yeah,
second.
that one does.
My motion still stands.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon. Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next appointment, please.
The next 2 appointments do not require council approval or council confirmation. Ron Noricki of East Providence Tree Warden, annual appointment made by the mayor and subject to approval by the Department of Environmental Management. Terms from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2022. The second appointment not requiring council confirmation is Joe Gibson, appointment for the Tree Commission, appointment seat 4, which is currently vacant. Term will be from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Next announcement.
The city held the unveiling of the sign of the recently renamed East Providence Senior Center to the Robert E. Rock Senior Center. Robert Rock and his family, federal, state, and local officials, and members of the East Providence Police Department were all in attendance. Lastly, the city will be hiring a licensed independent clinical social worker to work with the victims of crime and domestic violence. The independent social worker will also be available to provide counseling to members of the city's public safety departments. Our vision for this licensed independent clinical social worker is to have someone on staff in a full-time capacity with the police department to help follow up issues involving domestic violence, child abuse, sexual abuse, suicide, substance abuse, and mental health, or anything else that involves emotional trauma. The person will also provide support for members of the police, fire, and city members who also may suffer from these issues as well. This will be the first of its kind program for the city of East Providence.
I have a couple questions on that last part, B. How much will this social worker cost the city?
We haven't nailed down the figure, but it's going to be market rate for a social worker, which I believe is somewhere in the vicinity of $60,000, 60 to 70, depending on commissioner with experience.
Been trying to do some research on it, and what we're looking for a master's level person with an LICSW, looking like 70s as a base salary is what the market looks like.
So when I looked into this, I don't have an issue with that, but I have to make a few points here, right? I've indicated a few times that my childhood, and I'm not ashamed to say it now, was a violent, domestic violence type of childhood. I witnessed it all, right? And that's why my mom is, you know, my hero, because I see what she went through and she's still around. And, you know. But I also was part of the reason why I got into law enforcement, one of the big reasons why I got into law enforcement. Chief, you know that we have 4 domestic violence advocacy centers in the state. We have Blackstone Valley, Women's Resource, we have the Elizabeth Buffum House, and we have the Domestic Violence Resource Center. And each one takes care of their little area. In Rhode Island, Blackstone Valley being the one that takes care of Woonsocket, Cumberland, Pawtucket, and should be East Providence, but for some reason we don't utilize that service. They are directly, those LEAs, those law enforcement advocates, as you know, they are directly connected with all the other agencies in the state. So if a woman needs an emergency or a male victim of domestic violence, it could be either or, they need an emergency shelter, they have the ability to place that person in those emergency shelters throughout the state. It's a free service. They are instrumental in their knowledge, and I have used them so many times as a supervisor to come and be witnesses and help us question victims of sexual assaults, victims of domestic abuse. Day one, work with day one as far as, with the children aspect of, involved in crimes. And it's free. It's a free service. I do like what you're saying, working with the staff, but when East Providence gets accredited, the peer support is going to be a standard. Not only that, the service of getting help for and anonymous, by the way, for any officer and family member for these programs, like the one out of Warwick and one that we currently just signed onto through the trust, like $1 something a person per month. It's ridiculously cheap. And I know people who continuously use that in my department. And, they go and they are seen by a confidential clinician, and it works. So I just don't see why we should spend and do another position. And I haven't even discussed if this person's going to be, is it going to be an addition benefits? They're going to be paying, they're going to be doing this, health insurance, dental. So it all adds up. Why are we utilizing, spending money there when we have the free services right here, with the LEAs?
What I found throughout my career is the services are out there, but there's no, how should I say it, continuity with them. We are looking to better serve this community with a full-time person on staff. So back in 2007, we worked closely with Family Services of Rhode Island. And throughout the years, it was always dependent on their funding. So there'd be some years where we would have an advocate in-house 2 or 3 days a week. We're down to 3 hours a week. She cannot accomplish much in those 3 hours. When she was here much more, we were able to service people much more efficiently and meet the needs of the community. I see it as this person, what I envision this position to be, is much more of a catch-all, a coordinator of these services for our city, a liaison to all of these other services that are out there. It's just that these other services, some of them are very, I don't know if fly-by-night is the right word, but one week we're dealing with this person for mental health issues. We're going to be embedded in your station. We're going to respond out. We're going to do this. Great, this sounds great. All right, let's get going. 2 months later, we don't have the funding. We can't do this. So I see it as an ability to respond quickly. If an officer in the field needs that person's expertise to support someone, we can have them respond almost immediately. I think the delivery of service will be much more efficient and much more effective, building relationships in the community with one person as opposed to several different people. And I think that goes for our officers too. They get confused. I get confused on who we're dealing with this week when it comes to substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence. I want to be able to have consistency. I want to be able to provide that consistency to the community.
But East Providence has never had an LEA. East Providence has a counselor that is funded by EPCAP and some other funds. That person has never been, I think East Providence has been the only community that really has not utilized a true LEA that provides those services, with, guiding people through the court processes, restraining orders, no contact orders, and all of that right. They encompass on their job. East Providence never had that experience of a true LEA that's provided for free from one of these organizations. And this is all I'm saying. I know we don't have to make a decision. We're not voting on this. But I want to bring my point across that To me, it's gonna be another waste of money and another position where we have the services that East Providence has never signed on to readily available.
I respectfully disagree, sir. That may be very accurate, that we have not utilized this person for this very specific area of social services. I want a person that can provide services for a wide swath of social services. This person is going to be certified to, cert someone to a hospital, okay, which we have never had the ability to do. We would have to rely on an outside agency. So I understand what you're saying, but my vision for this is much wider. And I think it's something that the community as a whole and my officers, when it comes to what they see on the road and mental health, having that connection with someone in-house, I think will prove invaluable. I really do.
Chief, I just have a quick question to piggyback off of that. So I'm all for, providing support to our men and women who serve the community and having somebody there to also support the residents in, a various different situations that may arise that otherwise an officer might not be the best person to address, okay? My question is this something that you're looking for in the upcoming budget, or has this somehow been allocated into the current budget? Because I don't remember a conversation about that during the budget time.
Right, and there wasn't. We have identified funds in the budget that could be utilized towards this. This is not going to cause a cop not to be hired. That's not the case.
And this is in your budget?
Yes, that's correct. That is not the case at all. This is not going to replace a police officer by any stretch of the imagination. So
where in the budget then would you be pulling from out of your line items?
Well, we have a variety of ways. We have budgeted for 103 officers. Are we going to get there? I'm not really sure.
You just said it wasn't going to come out of the pool for officers.
Correct, but I don't see it coming out of that. But we're looking at it. And we're going to be able to make it work.
Thank you for your honest response.
Any other further questions for the chief while it's here? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next item, reports of other city officials, report of the city solicitor, claims committee report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members of the council, as you know, the city council met as a claims committee prior to this meeting. Claim of Albert Perry of $1,286.19 was sent to refer to the responsible contractor, MTG Disposal LLC. The council also voted on a settlement agreement for a tax assessment with 10 Trips Lane, the disclosure of which I'm going to withhold, except that the council unanimously approved the settlement agreement, and the terms of that settlement agreement will be made public once it's finally executed, and the matter is dismissed from the Superior Court. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. We're going to move right along to page 6 on resolutions.
Resolutions, number 3 is resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with AM Electric LLC for the installation of lighting at the George S. Lima Senior Memorial Park at Hull Street Playground. Sponsors, Council Vice President Rodrick, Councilman Cahoon, and Councilwoman Souza.
I just have one question for the Borges. I hate to ask this question, but
I'm glad I stuck around.
It's been an ongoing question for years now.
Okay.
Will that include a wire drop in Riverside Square? And it looks like the contract does kind of indicate that.
Yeah, so the wire drop, so originally, excuse me, as you may have known, we went out to bid for the work at Riverside Square to include additional electrical work at those patio areas throughout the square. That came in at an exorbitant amount of money. So we went back to the drawing board, reduced the scope of work, and yes, we will be installing a wire drop at Riverside Square.
I did see one 16 feet up. I read all that pole, I believe. I think I saw the contract, right?
Yeah, I would have to look at it.
I'm just, so it is gonna.
There, yes, we went back out to bid, got 3 quotes from 3 different contractors, and I cannot recall which contractor we're awarding it to, but that was just recently taken care of. So the National Grid permitting process will begin, and we've in that scope of work, we've allowed for additional conduit to be able to do future upgrades further down the square, over by Dairy B and some additional areas, so.
The section I was reading is, any specification on poles supplying power to string lights, poles shall provide a minimum of 16 feet high clearance. That got me excited when I saw
Yeah,
that.
I mean, the string lights were extremely expensive. We did not have the budget to do that.
But there'll be it looks like housing a GFI outlet.
Yeah, so the scope of work, what we're gonna be doing is a wire drop. It'll include a meter pedestal with a 200 amp service, an exterior plug for the Christmas tree, and then it will include additional conduit runs off of that concrete pad to allocate and account for additional circuits, hopefully in the future.
Thank you.
Yep.
Someone want to take a lead on the resolution authorizing for A&M Electric? Install lights at George Lima.
I think, Mr. President, that this, the project has been approved at our last meeting, and this is the authorization for payment with the contractor. I'm just not sure on the total cost. I see the $76,850 and mentions for Hull Street, but we're also talking about Central Park, George Lima, and I don't know, maybe if Malcolm, I see is in the back of the room, or if someone in administration has that file, because in order for us to
Two
vote.
locations or one location here?
Well, the resolution talks about George Lima.
Right, at Memorial Park.
Installation of lighting at George Lima Memorial Park. I'm wondering if there's a typo here. It says George Lima Memorial Park at Hull Street. Oh, that is Hull Street. That's not Central Park. Okay.
Yeah, and the total includes the alternate, the total
Okay,
of
so it's 92,000. So 92,657. So I would move approval, the contract in that amount, 92,657, and to clarify, it is the Hull Street Playground, also portion of it known as the George Lima.
Right, where the
Park.
parking, car parking is, and the separate lot in the back that's also vacant, and the playground.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. And just to clarify, that alternate is for LED lights on the installation. So that brings it up to the total of the 92K.
Okay, we have a motion, it was seconded, and may we have a roll call vote on this?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Council President Brito?
Aye, next item, please.
Adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick?
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza?
Aye.
Council President Brito?
Aye, everybody
Merry
have a Merry
Christmas,
Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.